So if we can start, perhaps you can give me a little bit of background on Peer's software, a little sort of brief history and any sort of, I guess, important milestones to date.
Yeah, so Peer Software was founded in 1993 in New York on Long Island. So we are over 25 years in the business. And from day one, we were focusing on the challenges customers have in a wide area network environment. So our first product we released was PeerSync, which was just replicating data between multiple locations. Then in 2011, we stepped over to Europe, had our first office in Munich. And then in 2018, we expanded further with an office in London to be closer to our UK customers. Today, we have more than just one product. PeerSync evolved over the time, and our current product is called PeerGFS for Peer Global File Service, and it combines all the features from our previous products we had. So our customers have it easier to manage the environment. Okay. Myself, I'm over 10 years now with Peer Software, and yeah, we are constantly growing as a privately funded company. So we have right now we have 5 offices across the world. Our headquarters moved from Long Island to Washington, DC. We have an office in Boston, Los Angeles, Munich, and London.
And you mentioned the product, the PeerGFS, but perhaps if we can drill down in a bit more detail. So I know you have a solution focusing on, I think, file management for the edge, and I guess we all know how important the edge is becoming, you know, as
yes.
the wave passes.
Yes, that is correct. So when we combined everything into one product, the main challenge our customers face is when they have more than one location. You have a headquarter and you have a branch office or a service office in a different city or different country, is how do they work together? Because very often they need to share data. They need to work on the same data. And remote access is a traditional way. But when you have latency problems or bandwidth constraints, because main office is maybe in London and you have a branch in Melbourne and something in Munich, something in Budapest, it is too slow. And so users get frustrated. And with our solution, we help these customers by bringing all the important data local to the customer's environment. So they have local LAN access. And we make sure that when now you have the same file existing in multiple servers and multiple locations, there are no version conflicts. So we take care of that with our distributed locking functionality. Once we have that installed, the next step is to say, you know, when I have a headquarter and I have a branch office, sometimes I don't have a big IT staff in the branch. It's maybe only a service station or a production facility. And so I don't want to deal with all the backup stuff I have to do. So we can also, instead of only pushing data from central to the edge, also bring data back from the edge to the central side as a continuous data protection. So you only do your backup in your central side, on the data center. The advantage of that is now you have collaboration working because the shared data is local in the edge. Everything which gets created in the edge will get synchronized to the data center. And now you have high availability. So if the branch, for some reason, server goes down, you can reroute the users to the central side and they can still access their data. So with our solution, Global File Service, we tackle 3 problems: offering fast local access to files at the edge, get rid of the local backup by doing continuous data protection, pump data from the edge into the data center, and offer high availability for file service, because since we are doing file by file, the key here is real-time replication, you can at any time switch users to the central side and they can still find their data structure and work on their files.
Okay, and I think you probably covered it to a certain extent because you mentioned about the synchronization, but data center synchronization in itself is another, I guess, sort of important capability.
Yes.
I referred to it in terms of the edge back to the center, but can you tell us a bit more about it? in total.
So with PeerGFS, we are covering several use cases. It's a very powerful application implementing a global file service. The edge is one, but we also have customers who have two data centers. And traditionally, you have an active data center and you have a backup data center, and you use scheduled replication to every hour send data to the backup data center. So in case of a failure, you can boot it up and continue. But in today's world where people are demanding 24/7 by 365, it's important to have a solution which is immediately available and your RPO, so recovery point objective, is minimized, close to zero. So with our real-time replication capabilities, we can keep these data centers in sync. So as soon as a change happens in your data center 1, we replicate the change over to data center 2. So in the case of a failure, you can switch the users over, and the delta, the RPO, is minimized down to minutes instead of an hour or 4 hours. At the same time, so this is when you use sync only, but you can also enable our locking again, and then you can make your backup data center an active part. And now you can do load balancing, because now we keep both in sync. So changes happening in A gets pushed to B, changes in B, we push to A. And at that moment, the investment you had in your backup data center, which was sitting there just as an insurance in case something happens, you can actually utilize. And this is becoming very important these days where budgets are getting tighter. People want to make sure they use their investment in an optimal way and not having something sitting just to wait for a disaster to happen. Yeah. So active for file service, and we see a lot of customers using that active capabilities for VDI deployments. Because normally you have one VDI cluster, but now you have a disaster recovery data center which is sitting there. But now with more people demanding access, we bring that backup data center live in an active environment, and now you can split the load on both data centers. Another use case which the customers brought to us, we haven't thought about this actually, was we have customers who already moved completely into the cloud because their application is born on the cloud, so the data is on the cloud. But they may have a cloud zone, East Coast, and they also have a lot of users accessing the cloud zone on the West Coast. They need to make sure that the data is in sync, because pointing all the users from west to east and vice versa was too slow for them. And they used us to make sure their instances in both cloud zones are in sync all the time. Because whatever the cloud provider offered was again on a scheduled basis. So the RPO was, I think, 30 minutes to up to an hour, which was not acceptable for them. And with our real time, we keep it in sync down to minutes. So that's for data center.
Okay. And again, I think you sort of touched on it, but the importance of native cloud backup and replication technology. Yes. I know there's a lot of sort of legacy stuff out there, and there's sort of arguments about that versus native. Can you just explain sort of?
Yes. So our latest addition to the product was an object connector. Because when you deal with, we are the master of files. When you deal with files in an on-prem environment, more and more customers saying, hey, what is this object? Can I use you to back up my data into cloud or into object store, on-prem or in the cloud? And we thought about it and said, listen, we want to do a different approach than the majority does. Because the traditional way is you do backup into a big file, a vault, and then that vault gets sent to the cloud for safety. And you can track several versions. And we said, we want to do it differently. We want to do single file to single object. So in essence, doing a continuous data protection, which you usually are on file server, into the cloud. As soon as the file changes, we send the new version of the file into an object. So the difference is, it has two advantages. One is, if you want to recover a single file, it's very easy because each file is in a single object, so we can give you a list of all the versions we have and you can pick and we bring it back immediately. It's very fast. The other advantage is Traditionally, when your data is in a vault, it sits in the cloud and you can't do anything with it because the data is not readable. It's capsulated in a proprietary format. With our solution, we keep it in open format, in native format, so the data is consumable in the cloud. You can use cloud analytics to do something with your backup data because more and more cloud providers offer you analytic services. So you can do simple ones. You can do text analysis. You can do speech to text. You can do, voice recognition, picture recognition. So for example, you need to know what data do I have from Klaus in my backup data, but not only Klaus as a file owner. I want to see all the pictures from Klaus, all the voice recordings from Klaus. And there are analytic services which can do that for you. And with our backup to cloud, since we keep it in native format, you can use all these services because the data is readable for the cloud services. The other advantage is if you don't like us anymore in 5 years down the road and you kick us out, you can access all your data. You can read all your data. You can use a native cloud browser and go through your data because nothing is encrypted and nothing is saved in a proprietary format which only our software can access.
Okay, and one other aspect of storage, I guess, which people are nervous of and is very important, but is the data migration angle. I see a lot of people sort of cross their fingers and hope it's all going to work okay. So how do you guys facilitate that? I guess, help people with what is normally a major worry.
So I think migration is a pain which never goes away. It's always there. It will always be there because every time you refresh your infrastructure, very often you go with new technology, new vendors popping up every year with new technologies, and you need to migrate data. The major problem with migration is always that central IT normally has no idea what's on my server because that's what the business controls. They're just servicing with storage to the business. And the cutover, because the cutover, when you switch the users from the old to the new system, means downtime. And as I said before, we live in a world, 24 by 7 by 365. That cutover window needs to be as little as possible because business can't afford long downtimes. Traditional software have an unpredictable downtime for the cutover because they need a final scan. So they need to crawl your whole data structure on the old system, check out what has changed since the last scan, and then disconnect all the users, figure it out, sync it over, connect the users to the new system. That downtime is unpredictable because you have no idea how long the scan takes. With our software, again, everything we do is built on real time. We don't need a final scan because we are tracking all the changes in real time on the source system. So once you disconnect your users because you want to do a cutover, we only sync over the last opened files. We know what was open, we just push it over and you can switch. So your downtime is down to minutes because you don't need a final scan. And therefore we offer our customers a migration solution, which you can just rent for the time of your migration. Since we are the file specialists, they expect something from us. And so we have a special separate product called PeerSync Migration Edition, which just deals with the migration. It is very fast, very powerful, and helps with that challenge. And the nice thing is, since again, we are the WAN specialist, you can not only use us for data center migration, where you switch out your old to the new hardware, you can also use us for server consolidation projects because we, again, the software is designed to replicate over a wide area network. So if you want to move your data from the edge into your data center or into a cloud instance, you can use us for that as well to consolidate your file server.
Okay, so we talked, I think, about most of the technology and the products in product set. Are you able to share with, I know sometimes it's a bit sensitive, but are you able to share a couple of sort of actual examples where customers have, used some or all of your technology to?
Yeah, I mean, we have actually 3 pretty big customers in the UK. I can give you some examples. One is a big bank which has 50 locations in Europe. and they still work with a lot of Office. I mean, banks live in Excel, yeah, and they need to share these documents. And they said, no, remote access, we don't want VDI, we want the files local. And because in some of the areas, connectivity is not that great. So we help them by replicating everything across Europe into all data centers in Europe. So every one of the users have local access. The other example is a production company, manufacturing company, where the headquarter is in the UK base, but they have a production facility in Poland. They have something in Singapore and Australia. And these locations are, manufacturing is usually not in the downtown of the city. It's too expensive. You have it outside on the countryside where connectivity and infrastructure is sometimes challenging. And so they use us to replicate all the drawings from the current projects into the production facility from the headquarters where the engineering is based, and make sure they have local fast access. And the third customer is actually in healthcare in the UK, where they have doctors running around working in multiple hospitals or doctor offices, and they have to make sure whenever they are in office one and they do diagnosis and they create new data, it gets synced to the other location. So when the doctor is traveling, he finds the latest data on the local server. We have a lot of these use cases across the world, and especially in Europe, a lot of companies have organized very decentralized. They have headquarter in UK or in Germany, and then service and manufacturing outsourced. They work in Italy, in Eastern Europe, in Asia. So they all face the same challenge. A customer in the past said something to me which was very excellent, defined to the point. They said, even the fastest WAN connection can't compete with local access, with local LAN access. You can invest as much money as you want in big pipes and WAN acceleration. It can't compete with local LAN access. And that is the main reason they are using us, because especially in the CAT industry, these are big files, hundreds of megabytes, hundreds of gigabytes sometimes. And they can wait half an hour with remote access to open one file on the screen. And by putting the data local, they increase productivity and they can hit their deadlines. So these are the usual customers we find. And recently, the last 2 years, the data center sync comes up, and the largest customer we have with that is in America, where we keep in sync roughly 700 terabytes between 2 data centers for thousands of remote users using an application which directly accesses the cloud.
Brilliant. That's an excellent selection of stuff. I appreciate that. In terms of, we've talked the technology and a bit of sort of customer references. In terms of the future, I mean, again, without giving away, sort of trade secrets, can you give us a bit of an idea of whether it's company and or technology plans, for that?
I mean, there are from the product side, there are 2 requests we get a lot from the companies. File service lives for us in the CIS world, Microsoft, yeah. But more and more companies saying, we have NFS data. Can you also help us with your product covering NFS? And this is something which we are working on. It is coming this year, so we will also support NFS replication in real time. So the key factor here always is real-time replication. So this is one big feature. The other feature we are working on is making the software more intelligent with policies and machine learning, which data needs to be at the edge. So currently, the administrator needs to say, I want to share this or this directory out to my edge. In the future version, you can say, this is a data, these are project directories, and this 5 edge locations needs to work with it, and the software will recognize which of the data needs to be in which location because they request access, and we will manage automatically which data needs to be sent down, kept locally, and which that can be pulled back because no one is accessing the data anymore. So we will help companies to bring down the administrative overhead and make the software more intelligent to manage these remote locations. In terms of company steps, we are looking to expand our footprint in Asia, because a lot of customers we have in Europe, they have something in Asia, a corporation or their own facility, and we want to get closer to Asia. So we are looking currently into several locations to start with a support center, and then later also have consulting resources available in that location. Right now, Europe and America has first and second level support locally. And the next area we want to put that is Asia, to make sure we can support all these companies who want a closer contact to us in the region. Especially Australia and Hong Kong, Singapore are hotspots for us. We have a lot of customers in the area.
And before we finish, talking about expansion plans, with the current climate where work practices are changing significantly, or at least they have in the short term, and there's obviously a suggestion that longer term people, I think Fujitsu announced that, you know, their whole workforce in Japan, they're going to allow them to work remotely, etc. So the world is changing. I guess the obvious question is, how can you guys assist people, or are you already maybe assisting people with this new normal?
The way we can assist is, since we are software only, we are easy to deploy. And one of the key strengths we have is multi-vendor support. So we support all the major storage systems. And when customers these days need to extend their infrastructure, I mentioned one example in the past, previously, where we can help is VDI. You have active passive right now, you want to turn that into active because you have more load to handle. More users requesting working from home, they need VDI access. And so we help these companies by offering them a piece of software to turn their active passive environment into an active environment so they can do load balancing. The other way is where we see demand is where budget gets tighter, what to do with the old hardware. I just refreshed my data center. I may still have some older hardware which is still good. Can we use it as for disaster recovery? Yeah. And with our software, since we work cross-platform, we can help them saying, yes, no, you put us on both machines and we can help you to still integrate your decommissioned hardware from the data center for a backup data center. And you can, another way is you can refresh your hardware in the data center, but keep the old existing hardware in the edge because it may be good for another 2 years, but it's a different vendor. Natively, they don't talk to each other. With us, we are bridging that gap and we're helping them to make sure that their Nutanix or NetApp or EMC will talk to the Windows server. Yeah, and these are the two cases we see a lot, helping them to expand capacities for the higher demand in VDI to make it active, and also to help them to cross the boundaries between different storage systems.
Excellent. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything we haven't, or is there any sort of final thought you'd like to sort of leave us with?
No. I think we covered a lot, and thanks for the opportunity to share what Peer is doing. As soon as a customer has multiple locations and is looking for a global solution for their file service, we are a good option, and they should talk to us.
Okay, that's brilliant. I appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks. Thank you, and have a good time. Stay safe.